Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Brother Retrospective podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today to talk about season 21 of Big Brother. We're into the modern era, truly. And with me to talk about season 21, it's Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. When I'm with you, I see home. I look at you. That home is the Big Brother house, and it's
What?
BB21. When you look at me, you can see home.
What?
It's okay. I know you don't. You don't, so it's fine. BB21,
Yes.
Taran.
Season 21. We have now done 21 of these, or this is the 21st of them at the very least. And we are closing in on the end as we get closer and closer to the season 27 premiere. Plenty to talk about with season 21. But first, Grace, I have two posters to show you because my fault, the Big Brother 19 one was not done last week. Yeah. I believe I don't know. I don't remember if I revealed the results either. I don't think I did. Do you have a guess as to who the audience voted as the top 3 players for Big Brother 19 to be on the poster?
This is 19.
19 with Paul and Raven and Cody and Jess. And
my guess is
Josh.
Paul, Raven, and Cody. Paul. Yeah, it's probably Raven over. Yeah. Cody, Paul. I would say Josh, but I think the fans may have voted for Raven.
They did, in fact, put Josh and Raven. It's Paul, wow. Josh, and Raven in the background there.
Love it.
For Big Brother 19. That was it. There it is. The Big Brother 19 poster. But Grace, I'm honestly, I'm even more excited to show you the Big Brother 20 poster because they really went out on this one. All out on this one. Big Brother 20. Who's on the poster?
Tyler, Casey, and I don't know who's the third. I don't know who you put on. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you, yes, in fact, Tyler is, of course, the number 1 person on the poster. However, there, for the first time, was an exact tie between number 2 and number 3 for Big Brother 20. So I can reveal to you that this is the Big Brother 20 poster. Tyler with Caitlin and JC.
Caitlin and JC, huh? That's amazing. Okay, I'm starting to understand. This is a great poster, though.
It really is. This is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sensing a pattern. I can't believe I didn't guess Caitlin, who I would have been the third, but I did not think JC was making on there, but there he is.
I mean, truly, what could be more representative of this season than this poster, I think.
Yeah, Tyler being humongous, lording over them. Yeah.
So we will be making a poster for season 21, and we will be discussing who should be on the poster for season 21 as we talk through the season a year after season 21, season 20. I feel like season 20 kind of refreshed some hope in the fans that we were kind of feeling like, all right, we got a split house for the first time in a while. It was pretty exciting, and then it got a little boring, but we've got some hope. I think there was a huge amount of pessimism about the state of strategy in Big Brother. Primarily that the jury would not be awarding the strategists anymore. And this comes on the heels of, theoretically, and this wasn't really necessarily the jury's fault, but like season 17, Vanessa loses at the end. And that, again, that wasn't the jury's fault, but still it's sort of like aided in the perception of this thing. Because then in 18, people perceived again that Paul was a better player than Nicole. I think many fans have come around on that, but at the time it still felt pretty fresh. And then Paul loses again in season 19, and that was a very clear example of the strategist not really being rewarded. And then in 20, Tyler also loses many of these votes by just one vote, and they're all just losing one after another. People are giving up on the idea of, can you even be a strategist and win? And there's a large amount of pushback in the fan base for jury votes that are not rewarding the more strategic, dominant player. And that's actually pretty important when it comes to the results, especially of season 21. But that is kind of the state of things heading into it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see all of those, like the way that the results of the previous season then it start to end up bleeding on a show like Big Brother, where like there's so much information about how people play and how much you can see, and that people are heading into that next season seeing exactly what happened the year before. But also there's so much time in between the seasons going, and people thinking about it and probably not overanalyzing. That sounds like I'm insulting you, Taran, about overanalyzing. If anybody was to overanalyze Big Brother, it's okay, you're allowed. But yeah, this thing of like heading into a new season and thinking about how to play based on what has been deemed a winning game in the past.
Yeah, I mean, and you even have a Big Brother Celebrity starting up at around this time, and Ross Matthews losing that jury vote. So it really is. There's a lot of examples over and over and over again on Big Brother showing that the more, quote unquote dominant player is going to have a hard time winning. And so we head into Big Brother 21, and here it is. Here's our cast. The classic Big Brother 21 cast photo. If you weren't around at the time and you're looking at this cast photo, you might notice something. I don't know. Like I'll give you can you notice anything that feels a little bit off in this photo?
See, I remember. Oh yes, I remember. As soon as I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I know there's something, and then I found it pretty quickly. I think.
Yeah, a bit of a Where's Waldo situation here. This photo was released prior to the premiere. Mm-hmm. And it was deemed a bit of a spoiler because you can see there, if you haven't noticed it yet, yes, that David sitting on the cooler there is so incredibly clearly photoshopped into this photo.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's as soon as you see it, it's so hard not to see it. It's like they really thought, like they just took one look over this thing and were like, all right, good to go. And then just as it was going live, like, wait. Yeah, pretty brutal.
Yeah. This is also going to be the final season with new players before the casting initiative, and there are, I think, quite a few reasons why that might be the case. So yes, very quickly we learned, before we even saw them do a thing, that David was very likely going to be a night one boot. Who knew that someday, aka a year later, he'd be an all-star?
He's an all-star. Yeah, returns. Yeah.
So there are a few twists in Big Brother 21, and I'm thinking hard. I'm trying to think, were there any good ones?
Yeah, I was looking through. I was watching a lot of the clips and reading the Wikipedia pages and being like, oh yeah, these things all definitely happen. I definitely watched them on the show. They were part of the show. They all felt very bad. It's unfortunate, Taran, because the theme of the season is camp. And that's a thing that, for me, a big piece of my Big Brother blind spot is because I went to summer camp for many years. And so that really impacted. I'd often come back at the end of the summer and then like watch everything afterwards. And I was like, oh, I've always thought summer camp is basically like Big Brother, except you don't get to vote out the people who are annoying to you. So the actual downside, but the silly costumes, people hating it, fights, all of that stuff is summer camp. It's perfect. So I thought the theme was perfect. They don't nail it. They don't nail it, but it's okay. They tried. They try every season.
Yeah. So the first twist is that somebody was going to be named camp director. This was going to determine the first night one eviction. So basically, on first impressions alone, would you like to run for camp director and then vote for camp director? And wouldn't you know it, Jackson Mickey here in the background of this photo. Jackson Mickey, he is going to be elected camp director. He is, he's a good old boy. Everyone trusts Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like, he becomes camp director. It's not really clear whether this is like an HOH. It's like not really, but kind of basically like it serves a very similar purpose. If he puts up 4 people, one of them is going to go home on day 1. Yeah, I know you were talking last week with Aman about this idea of like, it felt, at that time, around this time, it was still, I don't know whether you think this is true or not. I can't remember when it shifted of sort of like whether or not you should win the first challenge, if you should do this. I think whether or not it was right for Tyler, which it seems like in retrospect it was, Jackson's the exact type of player who's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna win. It's fine. I'm a camp director.
Yes. And so as camp director, he is then instructed to banish 4 other house guests. And they would then have to sort of battle their way back into the house, essentially. And one of them would be a night 1 eviction. Jackson, he's got reasons for why he's going to choose everyone. And the reasons are, theoretically, of course, that he chooses Cliff, David, and Jessica because they were the other people who put their hat in the ring to compete for camp director. And then theoretically, he also chose Kemi because she didn't talk to him in his time as camp director. Except we did discover later that she did talk to him, despite the episodes portraying that to be a true statement from Jack. And right away, the word optics is getting thrown around quite a lot. Basically, nearly all of the people of color are now in the banished state of being, and Cliff is just like an older guy who's also there, and this is not going to change much. These optics and these people even are going to also be the primary people to continue to sort of be seen as these people are just getting beat on and kicked out of this game from literally night 1, first impressions from go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think we all love about reality TV is that it's you get these people from all different sorts of walks of life, and you put them into a situation, and you see, how the dynamics all play out and whatnot. But the idea of, yeah, I mean, this is for my money. We talk about by the end of the game what we think about Jackson. In terms of whatever, but there. It feels like, at least subconsciously, he made a choice that feels not great. And that is a pattern that I think a lot of people have pointed out that happens on reality shows anyway. It just is like they put such a spotlight on the fact that like this is what happens, and they basically do it by being like, 4 of you are going to be on the outs. Here you are the people who are ostracized from the rest of the group. It's pretty rough, Taran.
It is pretty rough. And so right away, and they literally get carried out by a giant squirrel who puts them in a bag. That is the visual that we get.
Well, most people don't realize that summer camp, you show up on first day, you're like, who's going to be camp director? You just pick somebody. And then you're like, who do we want to get rid of? And you put a squirrel comes and picks them up in a bag. That's very camp accurate, Taran.
I guess so. I'm learning,
You're learning.
So David is in fact going to be the person who loses this competition after being banished by Jackson, and he is going to be the first person evicted from the game. He will be gone for the week. However, he will return, which is partially why we do end up seeing him again in the second All-Star season a year from now. But for now, this was it for David. and people, myself included, just felt really bad about the whole situation. Why are we doing this? Why did it happen in the way that it did? Why can't we just play the game? But this was it for David.
Do you think like it does? They're just. I mean, the theme of the season ends up being like there ends up being this big power group that eventually is going to dissolve, as we're talking about, which is it is really satisfying in that way. It kind of feels like extra satisfying because this first portion of the game is so terrible. It's like it's so fun to see them, and that feels awful to see because it's like I just don't want the first thing to happen, so yeah, but pretty rough for David to go first year. And just the idea that you can't like we watch these shows because it's fun to see like could somebody get out of this situation. So even if he's in a worse situation, you have a lot of time, but he just loses. He just can't find his way out of the dark. That's what happens, and he's gone.
Yeah. So with David's eviction, don't worry. There's a new twist on the horizon. Camp director is over. It's time for the Wackivity competition.
It's rough. It's real. The naming is so rough. Wackivity.
You don't like Wackivity?
It does. It actually is super camp of like when you're just like trying to come up with something out of your butt, but you kind of want it to be better. I mean, this is what I've come to expect in terms of like the things that become part of your lexicon. You have to say Wackivity like a million times a week.
If you're a regular listener of this podcast, it may sound weird to you to hear me even say that because I made a point of never saying the correct name of this twist throughout the entirety of season 21.
Exactly.
It sounds weird to say.
Yeah, it's not a great name.
And not only did the Wackivity competition, not only was it just ridiculous, but it was such just a failure in terms of how it played out. Basically, a select amount of players would compete every week to try to win a power. And the powers were essentially, various forms of like very, very good or not that great, as they usually are. And Ovi wins the first Wackivity power. It's the Nightmare power, and it's essentially a coup d'état. Like they love these powers that are basically coup d'états. It allows for Ovi to sort of like change up the nomination ceremony. Now, of course, the coup d'état very importantly allowed Jordan to call a halt to the week, Jeff to call a halt to the week at the very end of the week and sort of do whatever he wanted then. But this was important that it could only be used before the veto ceremony. Which again became very important for the outcome of this week.
Yeah, I mean they I think that what they like is like being able to basically have something that happens that they're then going to know exactly what's going to happen, right? That I feel like that's like they're like they can then perfectly edit around this moment where Ovi stands up and they get everybody's reaction at the same time. So yeah, but yeah.
So Christie ends up winning the first HOH. And Christie, easy to find her thumbnail. Christie is the first winner of the first HOH, and she is wild. Now, many first HOHs are wild, and to her credit, I guess she's not as wild as many of them. However, she right out of the gate is like a pretty interesting first HOH, and under her rule, there is a big alliance that's formed. But it's important to note some very important things. One of them is that Christie knows.
Well, you got Tommy and Cliff.
Yeah,
I constantly get them. They know each other. Yeah. This is a weird where like it's not billed as a twist, right? Like these are no. And there's at least two of these where people kind of know each other.
There's two of these. Two in one season where they know each other and it was not intended.
But the Tommy Christie one is the best. When I was like, remembered how they knew each other, I was like, oh yeah, they were friends, right? It's like, no, Christie dated Tommy's aunt. That is the best. How do they know each other ever? That's the best. Yeah,
that's how he sees home.
That's how he sees home. Yeah, they're family.
So they have a secret alliance essentially coming into the game. It was like, this is so incredibly powerful. And Tommy is also a fan of the game, as is Christie. They're both in a very powerful position. She wins the first HOH. They're looking like the power duo to potentially take this season by storm. However, there is another duo in the game that know each other. Holly and, let's see if I can find her. Not even close. Where did she go? She's earlier. Kat.
Yeah.
They know each other as well. This connection is a little more tenuous, but it's strong enough for them to recognize that it's beneficial for the two of them to work together. However, there is a slight complication with Kat and Holly, and that is that before the feeds even came on, Kat and Jackson had a little bit of a thing. By the time the feeds come on, he's basically breaking up with Kat so that he can be with Holly.
Perfect. Good work. Well, I mean, it works out for most of them. Most of the trio.
Bit of a love triangle situation.
Yeah, rough.
So this is all kind of important background because these connections, I can't stress enough, are so incredibly powerful. And the 5 of these players all end up making jury, and the 2 major duos end up both in the final 6. And that's because of many factors, but one of them is certainly the fact that they are able to not only be a duo, but they were able to hide the connections that they had. So Holly and Jackson become a duo, but Holly's connection to Kat proves very valuable for a few key rounds in the middle of the game. And Tommy and Christie are more explicit in their sort of dominance through the early portion of the game. So with Christie in charge, a number of alliances start to pop up, but the primary one, the most important one, is called Grateful. With an 8.
With an 8. Has an 8 in there. Yeah.
Very important. Very important to. It's very important for me to always think of Grateful with an 8 because that helps me not have like a trigger flashback whenever I hear the word grateful as much.
That's right.
Because I think of Grateful regular with an A and Grateful terrible with an 8.
Yeah, that's right. I love the Christie, like little bit kooky person who's going to be on the show, and then it like the big alliance name because she's the first HOH being like this, like like we're grateful and there's 8 of us. It's perfect. I love it. No, I mean I don't actually love it, but I like the idea of it. I like the concept of it. Yeah.
So this alliance is the core of it is Jackson, really. He has initial connection to it's initially forming with like Bella, and then with Christie as HOH, they sort of pull in Christie and Tommy, and they all just kind of group up. First impressions. Who do they like? Who reminds them of themselves? Who feels like somebody they can get along with? And it's all the white people and Bella. And so I should say most. And so the Grateful Alliance is formed. It's 8 people. It's Christie, Holly, Jackson, Tommy. We've already talked about those players. I mentioned Bella. She is somebody who initially helps form this alliance. She ends up in a bit of a showmance with not Jack or Kat or Sis, but with Nick. And so the two of them end up getting kind of pulled into this alliance, Bella and Nick in a showmance. Nick, a child's therapist, or something along those lines. Then there is Jack, the other side of Jackson, Jack and Jackson. Jack is a macho dude. He looks like what's his name
Jason
from Game
Momoa.
of Thrones?
Jason.
Yes. And so of course Jack is going to join, and Jack has his showmance with not Jessica, but Sis.
Annalise, yeah.
Annalise, otherwise referred to as Sis. And so we have the Jack and Sis showmance. We have the Nick and Bella showmance. We have the Jackson and Holly showmance. And then we have the Christie and Tommy secret duo. That forms Grateful. Now, in the first week, Christie decides she wants to do the thing with the least, that will put the least amount of blood on her hands. And so she puts up Cliff, the older guy that was banished in the first round. Very easy target. And she puts up Kat, who was essentially Jackson's ex already by this point. Kat was somebody who was kind of getting pushed out by the majority. She didn't really fit in. She had the connection to Holly, but they were keeping it secret, and Holly was not sticking her neck out for Kat, especially because Holly was now kind of getting in with Jackson. And Kat was kind of going around starting catchphrases like, are you bitches conspiring against me? And so the two of them were, in a it was pretty easy to target the two of them.
Yeah, she's a little on the outs, and she's being kind of annoying, which is hilarious. That's like Christie's, reasoning to nominate Kat, and then Cliff goes up as well. And two white people go up, so it's a good start. It's a good start to the week, Taran. That's great.
Well, and I'm pretty sure like it was a little bit like this. It's already kind of being talked about, like optics and stuff. In fact, Jackson is going to push pretty hard for Christie to backdoor Kemi this week, and she's just kind of like, no, I think I'm good. I don't need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember this. When you the fear of like this big all-powerful alliance, and then it being it's like 75% showmans. You're like, oh man, this is rough. And they're calling themselves Grateful. You're like a little worried at the start of the game, but yeah.
Yes. So things go awry when Sam Smith, another outsider, wins the first veto, and he has bonded a bit with Cliff, and he kind of just wants to save Cliff. That's kind of Sam's thing, not Nick. Man, sometimes it just gets way out of order. Sam would like to save Cliff, and so this puts Christie in this position where she has to nominate somebody else.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that guy's name is Cliff Hogg. The Cowboys guy's name is Cliff Hogg. The third. He's the third Cliff Hogg to have existed. The best. It's great. Yeah.
Listen, if you're lucky enough to get one, you got to keep it going.
You got to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with Cliff coming off the block, Christie needs to find a replacement. She's very annoyed by this, and she's all over the place. Again, Kemi ends up being an option. Many people run through the various options, and Ovi ends up being the person she goes with to nominate here. The reason primarily being she didn't even want to. She had a good relationship with Ovi, but Ovi is the person who was trying to build his own kind of group, and was ratted out. And because of that, he was an easy target, an easy person to put up. And he was not able to do anything with his power to prevent this because it was too late for him to use it. And so just like that, Ovi ends up on the block and an easy first vote here for the house guests.
It's such a bummer because Ovi is such a big fan of the game, and he is about the sweetest human you could ever you could ever. I mean, you just dream up. I just like an adorable human being, and Ovi pops up. So quite sad when he gets put up on the block here, and then it looks like he's gonna go.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal stuff. He was a big fan. He, did his best to try to avoid his fate. But ultimately, again, he was just one of these people that was not included in things. He was game. He was talking game with people. He was connecting with people. They liked him, but he didn't fit in with the larger group. And so he was cast aside and becomes our first boot for Big Brother 21.
That's so hard at the beginning of the season when you do there is this seemingly big group, and whether or not it's so noticeable, but then people don't want to make waves that early, and so he ends up just being a little bit of a casualty there.
So with Ovi gone, a twist is revealed, another one, and this is called Camp Comeback. Camp Comeback. This twist means that the evicted players, the first 4 evicted players, will not only have a chance to return to the game, but they will be living with the rest of the house for the first few weeks of the game until one of them comes back into the game. So Ovi was just voted out, but he will be sticking around. And also, here comes David returning into the house to hang out with them and see if he's going to have a chance to get back into the game. However, they're going to be not given their regular clothing and put in essentially a have-not room, not given as many privileges. They can't participate in the game. Essentially, they are second-class players in this house.
It is so. Once again, optics so bad. But I feel like there's something to this of people who get voted out and then they still live in the house and you can cause chaos. There's a little bit of blood on the clock tower energy, Taran, of there's something in there about that's one of my favorite things about that game is that you can you die but you still are there. But because I think that's not really how the game you still have a team that you're on in that game, whereas in this it's there's just there's 2 things at play. One is that in any season the idea of only one of you is going to come back, and so maybe there is some world where there's a little bit of working with that person to try and figure out and if you do come back, we should work together, but secondarily in this season it's just that they're particularly there is this full on camp mode cool kid thing happening that is sucks and is very much not fun to watch as David and Ovi are on the outs.
So with the announcement of this twist, there was some drama happening. And this is a pretty common thing, especially in the new era of Big Brother, that this big alliance of 8 was not a big happy family. In particular, Nick was quite a gamer. He was really all over the place, and he was trying to form his own kind of in-group. And in the meantime, Tommy and Christie were trying to form their in-group. And there was a lot of tension between sort of these 2 sides of Grateful. And it split Bella from the main group as well because she was with Nick and they were trying to sort of do their own thing. Nick was pretty close to Sam. And there was all this drama about people talking game in front of other people and whispering and all of this stuff. And pretty quickly, this group had so much power that they felt really comfortable with the idea of just we can just cut Nick from the group, right? And they were looking to potentially turn on the alliance. That was the idea. However, with the announcement of Camp Comeback, they all kind of went, ooh, we need to take out a few more people first. And so Because of course, like there was no chance they were going to evict Nick and then have him stay in the house with them for another week and potentially come back, spilling all of their secrets, exposing their alliance. Like, it just couldn't work. So they literally were handcuffed. Like, they could not do that. And so they had to go back to the previous strategy, which was continue to take out more outsiders. And the perfect target for them in week 2, after Jack wins the HOH, was to target Kemi. And this one still hurts.
Is this the week where Jack? So Jack is HOH. He wins HOH, and he's gonna go. But is this the week where he delivers the shaker speech to Kemi? Is this that week?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm trying not to use the word rough because I've used it, so I'll say that's tough. Optics not great. Yeah, bad week here. I feel like
bad week. I won't I think dwell on it too much. I know Kemi is like a friend of mine. She's fantastic. And it sucks to have to talk about Kemi's situation in Big Brother, because it's, I think, painful for everyone. But she's in this position. She was trying to work with many of the women, including Nicole and Bella. She is ratted out by Bella as being part of a women's alliance, and that is used as justification to take a shot at her. They have the whole shaker bottle incident, amongst many others. If you want to go into more detail, of course, that stuff exists in the podcast that we made back then. Needless to say, it gets pretty ugly. She's up on the block with Jessica. Sam wins the veto again, does not use it this time, and most of them vote out Kemi, except for Jack's, who cast a hanky vote.
Yeah. Yeah, just it's brutal. I think the thing you were saying before about the fact that they get like handcuffed because of the twist is like, I think about this all the time when you talk about how the really unexpected, like expect the unexpected stuff really ends up resulting in the opposite of what you want, where you want people to make these like interesting moves, but they're too afraid that a twist will mess those up, and so you often end up playing more down the line. I feel like this is such a good example of that, where they might have gone after Nick, maybe not if with Jack, but and they end up getting rid of Kemi here. It's brutal.
Mm-hmm. So Nick wins the next HOH, and of course they all of Grateful are essentially like, yeah, we're chill with Nick. We've been totally fine with Nick this whole time. Everything's great. And Cliff, in the meantime, we haven't talked a lot about Cliff yet, but he is a very important figure in this season.
Yeah, he is.
Massive fan of the game coming in. And, despite the fact that he is immediately sort of not included in many of these alliances, he is going to relatively consistently make a lot of tough calls, many of which prove to be good ones, although he is still fairly heavily scrutinized for some of them, especially toward the end of the game, and to some degree rightfully so. One of his very bad decisions was a thing he called Cliffnotes, which, for the record, we love. Thank you. We like it when people talk to the cameras and tell us all of the things about their game. However, unfortunately, you do have to be pretty careful when you do so. And unfortunately for Cliff, who had been making good inroads into the various sides of the alliance, the big alliance, he gets caught talking to the cameras and basically exposing his sort of like intent, that he is playing strategically. He's like getting in with people, looking to betray them down the road, and like all of this stuff kind of gets exposed because he's overheard talking to the cameras. And that is extremely bad for Cliff, because the story of this season is largely that of a big majority alliance dominating the game, and the people on the outside doing everything they can to get a foot in the door. And essentially getting shut out time and time again, except for the few times where they're able to make a bit of a difference. And Cliff was on his way to getting a good foot in the door, but he gets caught with Cliffnotes, and this is an issue.
Here's the thing. I said he has a great name, but actually, if he just had a different name, he wouldn't have made the pun to do Cliffnotes, and he wouldn't have got caught. So really, it's his dad's fault, and really his grandfather's fault. It's a bummer because, like, as you said, like, this is exactly what you want, which is like getting exactly what's happening from the player, getting into their head, but it's a little too loud. He gets caught. I remind you, he was doing it in the morning, right? He would wake up early. Is that And so just thought he was the early bird, and he wasn't the only one up. It's rough.
Exactly. So another player we have to introduce at this point is Nicole Anthony. Also soon to be an all-star. Also soon to disappoint, I think, many people when she goes on All-Stars, like most players that go on All-Stars too. However, in this season, she is beloved, and rightfully so. Nicole is another player who is doing her best to infiltrate this big majority alliance. And she just lost her ally Kemi the previous round. And she's been in conversations with both sides. And she knows that there's a lot of tension with Nick and Bella, that the rest of Grateful actually does kind of want to take a shot at them. So the question became for Nicole, should I try to take this opportunity to expose the cracks in this alliance and maybe get Nick to make a big move? She goes for it, and she tells Nick about what's happening. Nick and Bella discuss it, and they do not believe her. They do not take what she says as truth. So they go and talk to the rest of Grateful, and the rest of Grateful goes, "Oh, you're totally right. Nicole is such a liar. Wow, she's like Vanessa Russo. She's a mastermind." And they all gather up in the HOH room, and Sam is in there too because he's connected to Nick, and so he's like, I'm part of this. And they decide to make a new alliance called Undeniable. Undeniable, because there's a 9 in it. Undeniable.
I just got that. This is where she like Jackson, right, tells her like not now, and
so they're up there. They are like bursting at the seams with vitriol for Nicole as she is scapegoated for telling the truth to Nick and Bella. They're all just trashing her, and they're being so loud about it that people can literally hear them from downstairs. And so everyone's just kind of like wondering what's going on. Nicole goes up to like check in on she knocks on the door, she opens the door, she tries to like, what's going on, guys? And they shut the door in her face and tell her to go away. And it's brutal. This is a brutal moment that many people were not fond of. Nicole is then backdoored by Nick with the intention of sending her home because she lied about the rest of the alliance. So it's not great.
Yeah, bad times. Not fun. Ovi is so sweet and comes up and knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I just don't think you should do that to someone. I don't think you should be that rude." And they're inside being like, "Who cares? She's the worst." It's so brutal. And yeah, I think if you built a second person out of scratch who's a sweetheart, the next person is Nicole besides Ovi. So it's not fun. I mean, again, it does then, like, it's pretty fun to watch. The problem is that we don't really get a great satisfying ending, but it's pretty fun to then hopefully see this big giant group crack, especially when they name themselves so poorly. Undeniable.
So the thing is that something we talked about a lot during this season, there were two, I think, major factors about Nicole and her game in season 21. One is that after this week, she gets really gun shy. She has a hard time pulling the trigger on moves moving forward because this one blew up in her face so dramatically. But the second thing is that she was really good at damage control. After this dramatically bad situation happened to her, she was able to talk to the remaining members of Grateful. There were facilitated conversations between her and Nick and Bella, and she just told the truth in front of these in front of Tommy, like the facilitator often. And the rest of the alliance kind of went like, Nicole's not really a mastermind. She was literally just talking to Nick and Bella and telling them things, and then Nick and Bella kind of exaggerated them and made it out to seem like Nicole was the bad guy. But there's a reason we were against Nick and Bella and wanted to target them in the first place. These guys are game players. And so over the course of the week after Nicole was backdoored, they kind of turned back around and they went, you know what? Camp Comeback is about to end. We want to take this shot at Nick and Bella. Why don't we blindside them, keep Nicole in the game, and then we'll just target them next week. That's like, we'll keep Nicole will be on our side because they just betrayed her by exposing what she said to him. And Nicole just does an excellent job at after the dramatically bad situation she was in of getting the majority back on her side, and she manages to survive this vote. Truly a Vanessa Russo after all, surviving a backdoor.
Yeah, like the fact that she goes to Bella and Nick and is like, hey, we should do something, and they're like, no, you're lying. And the fact that the people who to Nicole basically tried to to some degree, not like she doesn't throw in the bus, she just tries to like make a move. And when it all comes out, and it's I think a lot of it, there's this confrontation that Nicole, the mediated conversation, but it's done. So Tommy is kind of like there as like the mediator, and I think this is the thing where Nick starts to ask if like that, or at least imply that Nicole's anxiety isn't real. It's like, oh, that's just bad, and you're a therapist as well. This is just real bad, and it makes them look so awful. That in line with like that, it wasn't the most like Nicole didn't go and spread a lie. She just spread a truth to try to make a move, because what else do you do when you're on the bottom? Yeah, it's really good work by Nicole. And in the face of like some kind of not very fun things said about her. So yeah.
I mean, another way to look at this is sort of that basically Nicole tried to warn Nick that the alliance was against him. He then tells the alliance, "Hey, Nicole's telling me that you're against me." They go, "Oh yeah, well that's because Nicole is a liar," and they got all worked up about Nicole. So he nominated Nicole, and then they realized after he nominated Nicole, oh, we don't have to actually deny it anymore because he doesn't have any power left.
Right, it's done.
Let's just keep Nicole and target him next week.
Yeah.
So that's what they did, which was at the expense of one Cliff Hogg, who was left on the block, not supposed to go home after his kerfuffle, but ends up being voted out here over Nicole. So with Cliff being voted out, it's time for Camp Comeback to come into play. It's Camp Comeback time. And this is when a very infamous image screenshot from the episode.
Okay, hold on. Before we get to the really bad one, can we do the really good one where Cliff Hogg has one of the greatest victory celebrations to winning Camp Comeback ever?
Yeah.
Is that before or that's after? Because
no, that is before, I believe, because they all come out to talk to Julie at the same time. I can try to get that.
It's the best. He chucks his cowboy hat off. I can't remember what he does next, but he does like a money sign, and I'm like, that is so cool.
Yes, this is. I'll show you both images here. Here is
obviously, just to re-clarify, one is far more important as a historical, monument and image, and we should take time to talk about it. But also, his celebration was very cool. Yeah, here's
Cliff.
It's so good. Yeah.
And then here is the image I was talking about. This one makes the rounds of these three players in uniform talking to Julie, the first three officially evicted players from the season. And it doesn't take an expert to notice something about this photo.
Yeah, and it's just, I think what it is it's this thing that had been happening for years and years on reality TV. You know, Bryce Isaiah has talked a ton about the way he felt ostracized immediately in his season and was the reason that he was voted off early in Survivor. This is just a pattern of things that happen, that people have the subconscious about who they connect to, who that people do that. And when you put in a minority of people who then people feel like they don't connect that, and then they get targeted, and it's just like the culmination of years and years of that happening, with this like twist that Big Brother didn't mean to do it, but it's the way they set up their game that this is the outcome. And it said it you know, it is unfortunate. It does lead, I think, this in culmination with some of the things that happened in 2020 the next year that start to then end up having the show. Dude, this is also the last time they do a day one eviction, right? I think this is the last time. Like, and I know that this isn't that, but I was looking back through so far. Yeah, it could return at any moment, you know. But yeah, does feel like they learned. You know, not that it's great that happened. Not to diminish that. It really sucks for these three.
It's the first, like, it's just such a visual representation of something that people had been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
But you'd never seen the three players sitting next to each other in a uniform too, like having lived in like worse conditions, being ignored and ostracized by the people of the house. Like it just brought it to an extreme that helped make the point. And the point was made. It was not good. So Cliff wins that competition, does a celebration. Cliff will be returning to the game immediately. He doesn't even leave the house. Not that like Kemi left either, but or Ovi, but he barely, like, he's out of the game for like 10 minutes and comes right back in. And wouldn't you know it, not only does he come right back in, he goes on to win the very next HOH, and he does the same celebration.
It's the best. It's hat throwing. He does something else, and then he does the money, and I just think it's the coolest thing. And he does a
little shirt rip.
He does a Superman. He does a Superman.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's how I forgot. He does that, and then it's the money, and it's so cool. And he wins. And this is like the thing you love about Big Brother, is like being the person being on the bottom, the dramatic power shift that the next week the person who was the most of it, in this sense, out of literally has been voted out, comes back, wins head of household. Very fun, very exciting. Yeah.
And he does the thing that everybody wants the people on the outside to do, which is he nominates the two biggest figureheads in the game at the time, Jackson and Jack. Not Jack. That's not Jack. Where's Jack? There's Jack. Jackson and Jack. The two Jacks are on the block together. And it's like, wow, what whiplash, what a turnaround. The two of them are now in danger. But there's a problem, Grace. There's a problem. The first problem is that Jackson goes ahead and wins the veto. So he's going to be taking himself off the block. Oof. Annoying, but this is why you put both of them on the block, because you guarantee that the other one is going to be left on the block.
Yep.
Well, you guarantee it, except for the Wackivity powers. Oh, how goofy and fun, right?
Yeah.
They prevent this from being a guarantee. And this is because Christie, in the third week, won what is essentially a diamond power veto. It allowed her to turn the golden power veto into a diamond power veto. If she decided to activate this power, Jackson would be able to not only take himself off the block, but he would be able to name the replacement nominee. And that means that he could basically nominate like Nicole. He could nominate whoever he wanted. Bella was a person that they were looking to target. And then they would have the numbers in the majority to vote that person out. It was everything that I'd literally been talking about for years at this point, that these stupid powers only benefit the majority. That in the producer's imagination, they think, well, what if somebody like Cliff won the diamond power of veto power and used it to get somebody like Jack or Jackson on the block? Wouldn't that be incredible? The problem is, it wouldn't matter unless you have the votes to send that person home. It doesn't matter. These things that help poke holes in the power structure of how the game is set up, the game powers, only further allow the majorities to manipulate them to maintain their own power. And this is exactly what we're seeing here, that Jackson and Jack were both able to be safe because this power existed. Now, there is a slight caveat to this, and this is where people did not necessarily agree with the decision that was ultimately made, that Christie would have to decide to use the power prior to the nomination being made. So if theoretically Cliff could convince her to not use the power, saying, I will do what you want anyway, save your power, and then turn around and not do what she wanted, nominate her or anybody he wanted, Tommy, whatever. And so this is what the fans were desperate for, because they had finally seen Cliff win this HOH. He had nominated Jack and Jackson. They did not want this to go away. And Christie was hoping that this would play out. Christie was talking to Cliff and trying to make a deal, saying, if you do what I want so that I don't have to use this power, then essentially we will like bring you into the fold. We'll keep you safe for a number of weeks. And you know, all like there'll be no blowback for you nominating these two in the first place, so on and so forth. So Cliff had two options, or three options really. He could decline the offer and just say, no, I'm not going to do that. Christie would use her power, overturn his HOH anyway, and he'd be screwed. Obviously, he's not going to do that. That left him with two options. The first was, as I talked about, he could lie and say, sure, I'll do what you want. I'll nominate Bella. And then you don't have to use your power, and then I'll buy some goodwill with you. And then when it came to the nomination ceremony, the renomination ceremony, he would turn around and go, sorry, but this is like poker, and sometimes you gotta, you know, who's making your bet for you. And so Christie, go on the block. Or he could actually agree to the deal and follow through on it, nominating Bella and buying goodwill with the other side. Now, I am pretty outspokenly normally on the side of buying goodwill does nothing for you. Like, you are very, it's not very likely that it will mean anything. You can do someone a favor and they might treat you worse because they owe you, because now they feel annoyed about owing you something, or they feel guilty about not honoring their deal, and now they just want you gone because you're a reminder of their own dishonesty, or whatever the case is, right? So the idea of like getting favor, not a very good one. However, there's another key to this. The person that we're talking about as the renom, Bella. Bella, not Sam, but Bella, and Nick had discovered by this point that the alliance had turned on them. They'd been blindsided with the Nicole vote. They had been the ones trying to keep Cliff the week before because they were trying to get Nicole out. And so they were at this point like, hey, Cliff, we're buddy now, right? Like we're working together. You, us, Sam, Nicole, all of these other people. It's us against that other side. The other side now calling themselves the Six Shooters, because Nick, Bella, and Sam have been removed from Undeniable. Nick and Bella have been removed from Grateful. They've now become the Six Shooters. There's six of them left. And so ostensibly, this is now a two-sided house with Nick and Bella on one side, Cliff, and then like the other players, the other 6 shooters on the other side. The problem is Nick and Bella were not even remotely trustworthy. They were not real allies of Cliff, any more so than Grateful were, the old Grateful, now 6 shooters. In fact, as we are going to come to find out throughout the rest of this season, Cliff had better relationships and connections to many of the people in 6 shooters than he did with Nick and Bella themselves. They are the people who declined the offer of help just the week prior and nominated both Cliff and Nicole. And so for him to just completely trash any sense of what his word means in the game in order to save Bella and take a shot at one of the many people on the other side was essentially suicide for him in the game. It was not worth doing at that point. At least that was the argument that I was making at the time. And I said I could see it either both ways, and there were many debates. I think I even debated Derek Levasseur about this.
Yeah, the chat is fired up with the fact that Derek Levasseur said Cliff should have nominated Chris. Should have told Christie, yeah, I'll do it, and then nominate Christie. But
yeah, but ultimately he decided, I'm not sticking my neck out for the likes of Bella and Nick. I'd rather try to I took my shot. It didn't play out the way that I wanted to. And I need to now try to recover the situation that I'm in. And is there a right or wrong answer? Who knows? Cliff ends up doing very well from this point forward. And so I think history kind of proved this one to probably be the right call. But who knows what would have happened in the rest of the game if he had decided to go in a different direction. Either way, Bella takes the hit for this. And already, like, you know, the group is splintered anyway. It's now the 6 shooters. Bella is going to go home this week, and now the rest of 6 shooters are looking to remove not Cliff or Nicole, but Nick and Sam. They are the targets moving forward.
I think the other piece of this, in terms of like, you know, which side do you go with here? I feel like Cliff positions himself, I think, far better in terms of sort of like hierarchy of targets by moving to the side that's sort of like the 6 shooter side than it does the other side. I feel like that other side is so, like, it seems counterintuitive to think like, but it's only because he can't get out like these two. He can't get out the people that he wanted to get out, which was Jack or Jackson. And so, yeah, you could take a shot at somebody else, but then I feel like also having Jack and Jackson come after you, like you're the big target on the other side, versus I think you're surrounded by these other big targets by like not going after this big group. I think that feels counterintuitive, but I do have to think sometimes it is more, I think it's a more boring play, I think. But I think sometimes when you're playing like a board game, whatever, you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this boring move. This is far better for me right now than it is otherwise. So
it's the Jennifer problem in season 6. By betraying Kaser, yes, that's the theoretically correct move, but it's only theoretically correct for her side, not for her as an individual player, because turning on her word like that destroys any chance she has of not only winning the game, but even getting much further in the game, because she becomes the primary target for the other side.
Right.
And if Cliff had done that, you know, who knows what would have happened, because all of a sudden now he is, you know, enemy number 1 in the house, and Nick and Bella can kind of sidle back up to their old buddies who they thought they were buddies with just a week before.
Holly wins the next week, and she's going to nominate Nick and Sam, but she could have, like, if Cliff has made such an enemy of he's target number 1, maybe. So yeah.
So yes, Holly wins the next HOH, and she straight up just nominates Nick and Sam. They are the duo that remains from the ousted portion of Undeniable. Sam is seen as the bigger threat because he has won. He won those 2 vetoes back to back in weeks 1 and 2. But it's actually Nick that wins the veto this week to save himself. And so this is when things get very interesting, And this is when the season really starts to kick up a bit in terms of it's the interest that one might have in it.
I think this season has one of the it has the worst pre-jury, like maybe at, like it's one for the all-time. It's bad. It's real bad. If the ending of the season is a little better, there is enough in here that I think it just like it sort of fizzles at the end. But there is some good stuff here in the middle.
Yes. So, Kat has been a player not included in the majority, but has been working the relationship she has with Holly to the best of her ability to stick around. And she's kind of been like, in some cases, pleading with Holly to be like, I'm a cool kid, right? Like, you're gonna let me into the group. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like Cliff and Nicole. Like come on.
It's so sad how true that at summer camp, this is what it's like, where you're like, but I'm not annoying like them. Like, I'm cool. Just let me in. Yeah.
Right. And sort of in lieu of this, or sort of like because of this, I would say, she ends up volunteering to Holly, you can replace me. Or you can replace Nick with me on the block against Sam, because Sam is such a slam dunk person. Everyone wants to target Sam to send Sam home. You can put me on the block. There are, many reasons why this makes sense. I think in their minds, it helps hide their relationship because they knew each other. And it gets blood off of Holly's hands. She doesn't have to nominate any of Jessica, Cliff, or Nicole, the people that all kind of like came together to help them out the previous week. And this just really puts them in a bind, because they are sticking to what they agreed to the previous week when Cliff made that deal. And so Kat volunteers, and she goes up on the block against Sam. This is when things get very weird, because Cliff has been working hard in the time since he made that deal. He's been getting, maintaining this relationship he has with Christie and Jack and them, while also really starting to talk with Holly, who is the HOH this week, and he's making deals with her and talking a lot with Jackson. And Jackson and Holly are starting to feel like they have separate interests from that of Tommy and Christie and Jack on the other side. Because Tommy, Christie, Jack, and Sis, they're all kind of a package deal all of a sudden. And Jackson and Holly are starting to feel like they're the ones left out. They're the third wheel in the six shooters, the trio, or the three duos in a six-person alliance. And Cliff is a huge part of why he feels this way, because Cliff is going back and forth and revealing select amounts of information to both sides to help deepen this wound. And so as this wound gets deepened, Jack and Jackson, the relationship that has been holding this group together, starts to fall apart, because Jack learns from Jackson that Holly actually knows Kat from outside the game. And Jack tells Christie and Tommy about this, who are like, they know each other. And this spirals things out in a flurry of chaos that happens the night before and day of the eviction, where they start to think, should we now be voting out Kat? Is this a secret alliance between Kat and Holly and Jackson? And we need to take a shot at them right now. And meanwhile, Sam is like somebody that we could potentially pull in. We've been talking to him and Nick. Like, should we do something? And this is going wild, because now, Holly notices that something's going on, and she gets involved in the conversations. They're starting to question her, like, do you know Kat? And she's like, no, I don't know Kat. What are you talking about? And now Jackson has to come and be like, I don't know anything about this. That's not what I said. He has to deny what he said. Where is this coming from? There's all kinds of arguments going on. We get leaked footage from before the eviction, after the feed's cut, from somebody who's apparently been just taking satellite footage for years. And it's finally like, okay, I've been just keeping this to myself, but I'm just going to share this with you because it's wild. And for a moment, everyone's like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe we get this footage. Who is this person? And then that person disappears from the internet forever. And it's wild. We call this day 44 because it was just a tremendous amount of arguments and chaos. The vote is back and forth all day long, and finally ends with a narrow conclusion on Sam, and Kat manages to survive, largely due to Holly's interference and campaigning throughout the day to keep her safe.
Yeah, what's interesting is that this is like Jackson shouldn't have done this. He should not have said anything, and he tries to frame it like, no, I just was like trying to. I didn't really know it was that big of a deal. Like I just said, I don't even know if it's true, really. Like maybe, but also because, and it's just honestly, I think like I was rewatching some of this Jack might be one of my least favorite players just ever. It's tough, and so as people were pointing on the chat, like Jackson really for a moment kind of like there becomes a little bit like, actually is Jackson the underdog here, like because like it's sort of like him on the defensive, even though it is his fault. He is sort of trying to recover from a bigger he's like sort of like been booted out of this alliance potentially, that might vote out Kat because Kat's close to Holly, and it's just extremely fun. It ultimately just ends up like Sam just goes, so it feels whatever, but the chaos of this fight is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. People start to root for Jackson a bit in the middle of the season because they're rooting for his theoretically underdog side of the 6 shooters. But with Sam gone, the 6 shooters are still in chaos, and in the midst of that chaos, Jessica wins the HOH, and it's a classic one because she does what Cliff did. She nominates Jack and Jackson, only this time it's going to stick because she also wins the veto.
Big week for Jessica Milligros. This is the best. Love Jess. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's a very classic week. I remember at the time feeling like this was actually not at this point in the game the optimal play, given especially that these two sides were already warring. However, it was iconic and led to all kinds of fun drama amongst the cast. And so with Jack and Jackson staying up on the block, Jack becomes the target because he is part of the majority side at this point. And Cliff is another huge part of making sure this happens. He's lying to the other side throughout the week, pretending to them that he is going to be voting with them. While in the meantime, he's continuing to shore up his relationship with Jackson and Holly to say, hey, we're going to protect you against the other side of your alliance that's trying to vote you out right now. Very reminiscent, actually, of Danielle and Jason back in season 3. So the week just kind of plays out from there. Jack ends up being sent home against Jackson, and in the meantime, Jessica forms the Cliff's Angels with Cliff and Nicole. They form this underdog alliance that is unfortunately quite short-lived. But it felt like there's hope here. There's momentum happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is for as much as like it's so annoying to see this like big alliance come together. The fun of a big alliance coming together is that you hope that it then starts to crumble and fall apart. And this is probably the peak of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Jack is interrogated by Julie in his exit interview about comments that he made, and then later, I believe in my memory, I think his comic book poster was the Jackass.
That sounds about right.
And they released a video from the jury where he's like super annoyed about it.
Oh, I don't remember that. Yeah, first juror here, Jack. Yeah, it was really tough to go back. Like I think I like burned him from my brain and then had to go back and like relearn about Jack this past week, Taran. And I did not like it, I have to say.
No. So Tommy wins the next HOH.
Because this is also just in full Big Brother fashion, just very quickly. Julie does call Jack out for his like passive aggressive and racist comments, but then also makes a racial slur in the middle of calling out Jack. And if there's nothing more Big Brother than that, I don't know what I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Yes. So Tommy wins the next HOH. And there's a little bit of trickiness going on because once again, we have another twist. America's field trip. 3 players were voted by America to have to compete in the America's field trip competition. It gave one of them safety, which was Jackson, and one of them was an auto nominee that week, which was Christie. So on Tommy's HOH, Christie is now an automatic nominee. And they kind of knew that that America was voting for the people they didn't like at this point.
Yeah, there's a line at some point. Someone says, like, and I was watching the clip, and they were like, "That's why America hates them." It's like, how do they know that? And then, this twist. So,
and this is where people really started to like come around on Jackson briefly, because it was like, are you rooting for Jackson or are you rooting for Christie?
Right.
And Jackson was also like the person who was the most beating the drum about like they voted for us because they didn't like us, and the others were kind of denying it. It felt, and so it felt like, oh, he's a little self-aware. He's like fully against the other side now, and all of this stuff. So,
can I say something about Jackson and Jack too? There are moments where I'm like, it's they're and much more Jackson than Jack, where I'm like, you're actually like, this point you're making is not the most wrong point you're making. There's a thing that him and Holly have a disagreement about. I think she makes a joke about like him maybe having an eating disorder, and he's like, I don't want to. And it's kind of like just like the way he then is like reacting to that. He's like, I'm like, you're right and also wrong at the same time. So it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with Tommy as the HOH, his target is actually going to be Kat. And there's a reason for it. Tommy at this point is like, the remainder of his game is going to be focused on like, can I keep the remaining pieces of the structure that I built in the first portion of this game around long enough to see me to the end? Because remember, it was Tommy and Christie that helped build this structure out to their benefit when Christie was HOH. And they were the ones always in the majority within the majority within the majority. And all of this other chaos only served against them in terms of their interests. So it was in Tommy's interest to prevent all of this infighting. So he was constantly trying to sell to Jackson and Holly like, hey, yeah, 6 shooters, it's us, we're still here, we're still doing it. Meanwhile, Jackson and Holly were kind of like, no, like, we discovered that you guys are not with us. However, the fact that Tommy was still trying meant that like Tommy was not an immediate threat to them.
Right.
There were other things that they could deal with, other things that Tommy could deal with. So the key piece for Tommy to remove to try to take a shot at Jackson and Holly without actually openly taking a shot at them was to take a shot at Kat, because you don't know Kat, right? You don't have a secret connection to her. You're not secretly working with her, so you don't mind if I take out Kat. And Kat was somebody who was at this point at the height of her powers in the game, because she was in the middle of this Cliff's Angels alliance, the Outsiders, who she had finally started to embrace a bit more, and the and Jackson and Holly. And by taking out Kat, Tommy was hoping to remove that piece in the middle of those two groups, and weaken both sides in the process, and sort of like divide and conquer, right? The issue is that that's not exactly what happened. After Kat leaves, it opens the door for Cliff to really get in there and stick with Jackson and Holly. We'll talk about that soon. But it's a solid play from Tommy. I made the thing that I always think about when I think about Tommy's game is I posted like a GIF of I think it was like Buster Keaton, where he's like driving an old timey car because he was in the 30s, and the car just starts falling apart around him until he's just like fallen and sitting there in a surrounded by debris, just sitting in a small little chair holding a steering wheel. And like that was Tommy's game, just like riding it until not only the wheels, but everything fell off of the car. And he nearly made it. But he fell just short because the car didn't take him quite long enough.
Yeah, I was like really excited for Tommy because I'm like basically always going to be like, at least at the beginning, be like, I'm going to root for the LGBTQ cast of the season, and really wanted to do well. And I just like, he's such a big fan that I think you wanted him to do more than like try to rebuild the major alliance that was at the beginning, especially because he had sort of like burned them to a degree. And I think also it's one of those things where like I wish to some degree he had read that, like, I think Mickey and Cliff, there's like a connection to, like, there's sort of like good old boys in a way that you kind of want Tommy to like see that and be like, okay, I need to go with like whoever is over here and try to figure something else out instead of driving the car until it falls apart. But alas, he does get Cat is voted out. She's gone.
Cat is in fact voted out this week. It's theoretically a good move. But there's a problem. And this problem might sound familiar to you if you've been listening to these retrospective podcasts for the last few weeks, which is that after Tommy successfully takes Cat out of the game, it becomes near impossible, to make any kind of move against Jackson and Holly for the rest of the season. Yeah. Because they go on to trade off HOHs nearly every single week until the end of the game. Jackson wins the next one. Holly wins the one after that. Jackson wins the one after that. There's a brief double eviction where a shot could have been made. We'll talk about it. Nicole wins an HOH, but then Jackson wins the following HOH. Nicole also wins the final 4 HOH, but that's a powerless one. Jackson actually wins the more important competition, which is the veto, in order to keep himself and Holly safe. And then Jackson wins the final 3 HOH. So there is literally one opportunity to take out Jackson from week 7 after Tommy's HOH. There is only one opportunity left to evict Jackson, and only 2 opportunities to evict Holly in the coming weeks, and it just becomes impossible to mount a proper counter to that. And this truly was like the time that probably the shot should have been made. The problem is Tommy couldn't have even taken the shot at Jackson this week either, because he was safe from America's field trip.
So it's literally the week before where it needed
the week
to be
before they could have voted Jackson out over Jack.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I get why they voted out Jack. So yeah, and like they're two different. Like they're both big guys. They're different, but you could argue that like Jack could have been safe. The trouble is that like
to that point, Jack hadn't, like, Jack and Jackson won a similar amount of comps. Like it wasn't even.
I think that there's one. I think one. I guess because Sis is still in the. I do think Holly is like. I don't know. There's like you could argue that like Jack doesn't have quite the like, but it doesn't really matter because Jackson wins a challenge, and even the weeks that Holly wins, Jackson wins the veto.
Exactly. Like Holly and Jackson and Holly are able to trade off. You would say Jack and Sis might not have been able to trade off quite as well, except the problem there is that it wasn't Jack and Sis alone. It was Jack and Sis and Tommy and Christie, who were also very good at competitions.
Right.
And so it's a very Big Brother 25 problem where it's like you cut the head off of one snake and 2 grow in its place. Like if you are in the bottom half of competitors on your season, there are too many strong competitors for you to take out before the end game where it becomes just a steamroll. And every single time we do these retrospectives, there's a point roughly halfway, barely even, not even like 2/3 of the way sometimes through the season where we go, and that's when the season ended because the other people just traded comps off. That's what happened in season 20. It's what happened in season 19. It's what happened in this season. So it's just rough. It's just rough. And we're going to continue to have this issue for quite a while. Even in the like recent turnaround of Big Brother 26, where we saw a little bit of an improvement, the same thing happens. It's just Chelsea and Mackenzie trading off wins. And it's like, well, at least they're women.
Yeah, because the problem, even when you get to the first time they lose, at that point, then Jackson and Holly, even if they lose, which they do, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Yeah.
Well, the issue is that like you will occasionally have one opportunity to do it, but by the time that happens, they've had basically a month straight of being in power, making deals with people, like
right.
And then especially if it's a double eviction, it's like, how do you haven't expected to even have this opportunity. How do you like come around to making a move that changes the trajectory of your entire game within 20 minutes?
The double eviction is
so
the
hard.
that's the moment. We should probably talk about the best moment of the season, which is when Jessica falls off the wall. That's the best. That's the best moment of the season, and it comes next week.
Yes. Yes, Jackson ends up winning the following HOH, and Jessica falls off the wall.
They should replace the Wilhelm screen with Jessica falling off the wall. That should be standard. That should be the scream.
I wonder if it's possible for me to get that.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Everyone, do yourself a favor and just search Jessica falling off the wall if you're listening right now. Then come back.
I tweeted it out back in the day, but I doubt that's going to be the easiest place to find it. Okay, here we go. We might have it, but this is from the official Big Brother YouTube.
Wow.
I don't know. You know what? I bet I don't have audio for this though.
That's okay. And that's the best part. That's really the part.
Yeah, the audio is extremely necessary for this to work. I think I have a chance, but so with Jackson as this HOH, he's going to nominate Christie and Sis, and it's quite it's still quite the week. All right, let me see if this one works.
All the work I've made you do to find Cliff celebration and Jessica falling off a wall.
Here we go. Let me know if this is audible.
Oh yeah.
I gotta go.
You got it, Jess.
I don't want to hurt myself.
You gotta pee?
It's all right.
No,
You gotta go.
You gotta go, girl.
Let go.
I don't even want to fall.
I'm gonna get flagged for this. Come on, I need the drop.
Yeah, true. Okay, right there.
Turn to the side.
You're okay.
Good job, girl.
Okay, the best part of the setup is when she's like, "I gotta go," and they're like, "You gotta go to the bathroom."
You think they copyrighted that the screen?
Good job. I hope not.
Get flagged for that. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jessica falls off the wall. It's the scream. It's the.
That's what I'm saying. It's the best.
All right. So Annalise and Christie on the block. Jackson also wins this veto. The idea is to take out Christie because she's just a bigger threat than Sis. However, Christie makes a deal saying that I will go after Nick and work with you guys if you keep me around. And Jackson and Holly essentially agree to this. Now, throughout the rest of the season, we're often sort of like looking at the decisions made by Jackson and Holly at the time and disagreeing with almost all of them. They're like constantly believing people they shouldn't, buying into lies, making decisions that seem suboptimal, but they never get punished for it because they keep winning competitions.
Right. It just doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right. And so we end up with Taco Tuesday because Nick hears about Christie throwing his name out. He says, manifest the truth, bro. Manifest the truth.
Manifest the truth. Yeah, I forgot about manifest is a big theme of the season.
Christie likes to manifest. But she saves herself, and they vote out Sis over her in a spot where they really, really shouldn't have. But Holly goes on to win the following HOH. Well, I guess we talk a little bit about Sis, known for her lack of cooking ability.
And lack of knowing what an adjective is.
The classic moment. I asked her to if she had an adjective to use for Jack.
Yeah, what did she say? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. We just watched this clip for like an anniversary podcast, but Maybe somebody in the chat remembers
Yeah, someone will
she
get
came
it.
up with.
Yeah, unfortunate, Annalise. Seems lovely, but yeah,
she
yeah,
was lovely. She was very lovely
yeah.
in person. She talked a lot about a certain stool on the feeds as well.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that was
Oh
the
God, yeah.
thing.
Forgot about the school. Yeah, she said tall. She called him tall, apparently. Which
Okay.
that is, yeah.
Well, I highly recommend checking out the Big Brother 21 exit interviews. I was there in person. I was
Yeah.
there on the finale. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that when we get there. So, okay, this is what she said. I know a noun, and then said he's tall.
Tall.
And
Oh
I believe Rob was doing something along the lines of like, "Oh yes,
yeah, Rob was like, yeah, he was the same Raven, energy he had for Sis. Yeah.
So this was it for Sis, victim of Christie's self-preservation. Holly goes on to win the next HOH, and again, it's Christie versus Nick. Jackson wins the veto as well. They're just in complete control, and ultimately, Nick continues to take the L against Christie, in really a spot that he probably shouldn't have. Again, Christie and Tommy together was just not a good play necessarily. There was some logic to it, but it wasn't the logic being used at the time. They just felt like they could trust Tommy and Christie more than they could trust Nick. And the reality was that they couldn't trust either one. Now, in the meantime, while all this is happening, Cliff and Nicole have gotten in tight with Jackson and Holly. They've developed their own final four. In many ways, this is, Cliff and Nicole just had no other option. Jackson and Holly were just winning all these competitions, so they might as well try to get in with them. In the meantime, Jessica went in the opposite direction. She started buddying up with Christie. So it was kind of Jessica, Christie, Tommy, and then you had Jackson, Holly, Cliff, and Nicole left. And so the season was shaping up to sort of go in that direction. And then wouldn't you know it, I guess we'll talk about a little bit about Nick here, who ends up leaving. I mean,
yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
There's some stuff about him and it is. Am I remembering this correctly? Him and
what
Kat?
happened was that he got the America's Prankster twist, another twist, guys. And so it's him that I believe nominates Christie through this power. I'm trying to remember. Let me just look this one up. I don't remember the Prankster twist.
Yeah, I probably have. Yeah.
America's Prankster nominated one house guest for eviction at the nomination ceremony, leaving the head of household with only one nomination. Right. So he's nominated by
Holly, and then he puts up Christie.
And then he puts up Christie, and they just vote him out because Jackson wins the veto.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably his best move there. Well, yeah. Well, he tried. Yeah.
I mean, literally couldn't have done Holly or Jackson because they were both safe that week after Jackson wins that veto. So
yeah.
What are you going to do?
What do you do?
He does. I remember him trying to like make a deal. Like, I won't nominate Jackson. We discussed the efficacy of that. Ultimately, just none of it really mattered. Nick survived a lot longer than he probably should have, given the start he had to the game and what a big big target he was.
Yeah.
Very lucky that he ended up allying with Sam, who is such a big target from those veto wins. But even then, Sam actually had managed to make some inroads, and it might have been Nick that got voted out over Sam, if not for him winning that veto.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's going to be voted out here. Not remembered fondly, I would say.
I would agree. I feel like it's indicative that I feel like his most is like Nick Macaroni, and it's not even his real name. So I'm like, it says a lot.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
You'll never guess it, but Jackson wins the next HOH.
Ooh. Yeah.
And he makes it a decision that is often criticized, which is that he targets Jessica. Now, at the time, people were saying, Jessica, why target Jessica? She is the least threatening player left on the board, despite the fact that Jessica is the only person to have like kept Jackson on the block the entire season. So like, there's that. But more importantly, I actually think this was one of Jackson's better decisions. From my perspective, I argued this at the time, that by taking out Jessica, he's creating a scenario where there are 3 duos. And it sort of forces Cliff and Nicole to be more loyal to him than they would be otherwise. Because if you take a shot at Tommy or Christie and you leave Jessica in the game, now all of a sudden, what incentive do Nicole and Cliff have to stay loyal to you and Holly when, like, you know, why would they bother taking a shot at Tommy and Jessica, who are not even that linked together and much less threatening as individuals? It's a lot more likely that they team up with Jessica and take a shot at the only remaining duo in the house, which is exactly the opportunity they have when Nicole wins that double eviction HOH. So by taking out Jessica, Jackson does actually set himself up in the optimal place to survive exactly the scenario that happens. And he does so intentionally. He talks about this as part of his strategy. So I definitely have to give him credit for this one. Although there are still people who would say, you know, that they don't like the decision, that they don't think it was a good move. I do actually agree with this one. And it's a pretty easy one to manage. There's a little bit of a wrinkle when Tommy wins the veto and is able to take Christie off the block, forcing Cliff to have to go up, but it's an easy vote off for Jessica.
Yeah, no, I think that what you said makes sense. And it plays out exactly like that, where like literally when Nicole wins the double eviction, she's going to put up this duo rather than, you know, another, if that duo might not exist if Jessica stays in. So I think that is totally fair. And, you know, maybe being a little bit results oriented with the result in terms of like, yeah, it works out. So it's probably the right move because it works out. But yeah,
let me tell you, Grace, all season long, I was given opinions that were not popular, and I kept getting proven right, and I was riding high.
Feels good, right? Feels good. Yeah.
So yes, Jessica ends up leaving. Unfortunate spot here. You know, you would hope that this is not the spot you'd leave as Jessica, but what are you going to do? The following week, or sorry, not the following week, that same week in the double eviction, Nicole wins the HOH and decides to target Christie and Tommy. Cliff wins the veto and they vote out Christie. And this is a heavily criticized decision, and one that I think the criticism is warranted for. Again, I understand why they didn't turn around and make a move on Jackson and Holly, but it's, you know, especially in hindsight, this was the only chance they had. And if they had actually managed to keep Jackson on the block and take him out, it's a whole new game. Tommy and Christie were no slouches, and they were also very likely to win competitions. Okay, so let's maybe just talk through some of the logic here, right? Some of the reasons why you might not want to make this move if you're Nicole and Tom and Cliff. If you evict Christie, or sorry, if you evict Jackson, which is in hindsight the optimal play, all that does is it spurns Holly, who Holly and Jackson do have a deal with Tommy and Christie at this point. They just have a stronger deal with Cliff and Nicole. But if Cliff and Nicole betray Jackson and Holly, then the remainder, the person that stays, Holly, will team up with Tommy and Christie, who did not betray them. Tommy and Christie will happily take Holly as their third to take down the duo of Cliff and Nicole. And now it's 3v2 in the final 5, in a spot where all 3 of them are kind of better competitors than you. So that's kind of a rough spot. The same, and then it gets worse, because if you nominate Jackson and Holly, and then one of them wins the veto, say Jackson wins that veto, which he's been winning a lot of those vetoes. Now all of a sudden he's safe. Now it's Jackson, Tommy, and Christie up against the two of you. And you can't even win HOH. Nicole can't win HOH. This is one of you competing in that HOH. It's a brutal spot to be in. On top of that, everything I mentioned before, they've spent the last 3 weeks under the rule of Jackson and Holly, making deals with them, promises of going to the Final Four, never really expecting to even necessarily have this shot to take. And so the fact that they had to like spin their brains around to the idea of maybe working with Tommy and Christie to take down Jackson and Holly in the midst of a double eviction was just, I think, too big of an ask in the short amount of time that they had. So there's a lot of reasons why this really, like, why you might hesitate. Again, though, given what we know and given how the competition structure plays out, you had to take Jackson out here because he was just too big of a competition threat moving forward. And that's something that I didn't see at the time, because it was this season that really made me realize, oh, the competitions are broken. Because at the time I was like, well, at least the mental comps are coming.
Right.
This was me.
Right.
I said this
Right.
in Big Brother 21. I said at least the mental comps are coming, and that's where Cliff and Nicole will have an edge, especially against the likes of Jackson and Holly.
Yeah.
And we then realized, oh, there are none. It's different now, which is why, by the way, it's very frustrating for me that half a decade later, we're still hearing from super fans about how all the mental comps are coming up. It's been half a decade. Please.
Taran, that's not true. 2020 was like a year ago. The time broke at some point, so it has not been half a decade. Here's what I think. The thing I will say is, like, I think to some degree and this is no shade to Nicole and Cliff. I love them both immensely. I think they're very fun to watch. They're very nice people. The best players, like in terms of like the thing, yes, you could be like, well, they had to like switch their game up on it. They had to like make this decision because Nicole won the double eviction HOH, and then Cliff wins the veto, and they could have made this move. And like part of the like, oh, what a big ask of them. I think the best players like know this moment is coming and then are able to do it. And the other piece of it that I think is there is not just like, are you able to like in the moment know what's exactly the right thing to do and make the move, but I think also like Cliff, I think especially Cliff and I think more Cliff than Nicole, has a connection to Mickey that he has to then decide like, I have to, it's like the by and you want that like super fan, the Cliff who's giving Cliff notes to like, because he knows that people are watching on the live feeds to know like, yeah, you got to make that move. It's really hard. And I say it's really hard knowing that like the best of the best players make the move, and Cliff and Nicole choose not to make that move and they go a different way. And I think the best point is like, yeah, like you don't know that Mickey's going to win the next situation, but he's won a lot. And I think you probably do have to take that shot, even if and that's what we want too, is like, you want the players to like make that move, and every move is a risk, not every move is a risk, I guess, but you know that this one is, knowing that like, yeah, Nicole can't compete next time, but like, you got to take the shot because it might be the last shot you get. And the best players are able to like really find that moment, because like some people think it's their last shot, it's not the last shot, and they end up like it ends up backfiring. That wasn't the case here, and so you want them to be able to do it, and they don't. So yeah,
it's this season especially that I think makes it clear that the meta game of Big Brother has become all about competitions, especially the end game. And so if you're not focused on competitions, then you're not playing correctly, unless you're Taylor Hale. And so if you have somebody that's going to just dominate the competitions, or even just be better than you at the end game competitions, you have to get them out at any given opportunity. Always. It's just the way it goes. And even Taylor, who succeeded, planned on doing that if given the opportunity. She just wasn't, and it was forced to go in a different direction, which is a perfectly fine way to play if that's your only option. So ultimately, I think another part of this is that, and this is again where more of like the failure of Cliff and Nicole come into play, because they are screwed by the endgame competitions, certainly. But there's another part of this, which is that, and this is something we see, I think, often actually, which is that not only have you like made deals with people and it's hard to flip your brain around, but there's like a thing, I think, that being powerless in the game does to you, like on a physiological level, that like puts you in a state of mind that makes you feel more powerless, and makes you feel like you can't make those kinds of moves. We saw this really explicitly in Big Brother Canada 11, which I won't punish you to make you watch. But when somebody just keeps winning over and over, at some point, we even saw it in Big Brother 24 when Michael was winning, and it took Taylor to convince Monty and Turner to turn on Michael because they were literally saying, "We can't beat him.
Yeah,
we got to join him." And even then, when they had the power to, they were like, "Yeah, but we couldn't." Like, it's there's something that it does to your brain, I think, that like stops you from doing it, and you start to sort of like, a Stockholm syndrome, I believe, has been debunked as an actual thing, but like there is a kind of thing that could be described as the way that you would describe Stockholm syndrome, where the people in power have this kind of hold over you that it takes a little bit to shake from. And that's why I think you often don't see the players in the small windows that they have make the move. If they had power for consecutive weeks, I think they'd start to look it around and go, wait a minute, why am I keeping this person here anymore? But when they only have one opportunity, it's a lot less likely. And they fall into this hard, Cliff and Nicole. And it leads to some much more questionable decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I think you and I have also, we've played it enough. We're like, when you're watching, when you're watching the show, you have far more context than the people who are in there. And we've been in these moments where you play in a game and you're like, I think this is the right move, but I feel like I'm going to look like such a fool if I go for it and it's wrong, maybe not you, Tara, but that's how I feel. And so you get like stasis on it a little bit and feel like, if I'm so I think that's a lot what happens with
well, it's a structure that is designed for you to be a follower and not like a mover. And so there's more of a barrier for you to make moves that change the structure around you. There is more social barriers put in place to prevent you from doing that, structural ones. And this is where I really feel like there's so much of Big Brother that can be translated to how our society works. But I find it very interesting, and it's I think very evident in what happens with Cliff and Nicole. But either way, in the double eviction, they take their shot at Christie, and she is finally evicted, bringing us to the final five, where wouldn't you know it, Jackson wins the HOH.
Surprise.
Yeah. But all is not quite so simple, because Jackson has a little bit of a dilemma. With 5 people, you nominate 2. One person is left on the block, or left off the block. 2 people are left off the block. If the person who is left off, if one of the people who is left off the block wins the veto, uses the veto, it forces you to nominate the other person that you left off the block. Jackson would like to keep Holly safe, but he can't do so for sure unless he or Holly wins the veto.
Right.
The other way to make sure that she's safe is if one of the 2 people on the block wins the veto, because that would give him the opportunity to nominate either one of the people who hasn't been nominated initially. So what he does is he nominates Cliff and Tommy, the 2 people he sees as the most likely to win the veto. And he leaves Holly and Nicole off the block. The only way this turns out poorly for him is if Nicole, specifically Nicole, wins the veto, because that could force Holly on the block. And then Nicole and Cliff at that point would have the ability to decide amongst themselves which of Tommy or Holly they want to send home. And Holly could end up leaving on Jackson's HOH. Very famously, we talked about this back in Big Brother 5. This is what happened to Karen. That on Nokomis's HOH, it was actually conspired by Cowboy, Drew, and Diane that they threw the veto specifically to the person not on the block, so that that person could use the veto and force Karen on the block, and they could vote Karen out in dramatic fashion and a tragic end to Karen's game. So, wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happens. Nicole wins this veto, clutch veto, and she is able to now use this veto on Cliff and force Holly on the block next to Tommy. And now Nicole and Cliff have the ability to decide what they want to do. And this is essentially the second round in a row where they've had the power to evict which side they want to. And having already weakened Tommy's side by evicting Christie, they are prepared to now take the shot at Jackson and Holly. And so they are getting ready to do so. But Jackson has some things to say about that.
Yeah, is this Jackson sort of trying to leverage, the loyalty game? This one feels far more like of like a bad move. I feel like the one before the thing I said was like, I think the best players know that it's the right move. Good players can kind of like make that mistake, and I'm like, it doesn't mean you're like, it's a mistake. It's not it doesn't mean you're the worst player. This one feels, not that I think they're the worst players, but this one feels more egregious to have not voted out Holly here.
This is the one I think that most people will point to, and it is the one that I won't defend the decision because I think that what I said at the time was, I don't think there is a right decision because I can see both sides. And ultimately, I said that the end result will determine if people thought this was a good or a bad decision. Because the issue is that there is a case to be made for why you... Big Brother 21 strategically is like the season of dilemmas. Which is I think at least something interesting about the season. Mm-hmm. But basically, if you evict Holly here, you have now pissed off Jackson, who is very likely to win Final Four or whatever. Now, ideally, you force Jackson to have to take care of Tommy, but that's not necessarily the case. Tommy is promising up and down that he will be with you to take out Jackson in the following round, but can you trust Tommy to do so? More importantly, Tommy is good at competitions himself, especially with an endurance one coming up, which they knew. Tommy is very primed to win an endurance competition. And the worst thing here is that Tommy is a guaranteed win in the final two, in the sense that he wins, not you. He will win a jury vote sitting next to anybody left in the final two. And so if you keep Tommy heading into the final four, he now only needs to win 2 competitions and he's won the entire game.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it. He doesn't even need to necessarily win those 2 competitions, though, because all that needs to happen is that Jackson decides to evict you over Tommy because he's mad that you evicted Holly. And now all of a sudden, Tommy and Jackson are in the final 3 together because they've made a deal. And Jackson is stupid enough to go to the end with Tommy because he is confident enough he can beat him. There's all kinds of potential downsides there. And then especially if you are Nicole, because this is very important. If you are Nicole, you actually only have one way to win this game, and that's sitting in the final 2 with Holly. Nicole loses to Cliff. Nicole loses to Jackson. Nicole certainly loses to Tommy. And so for Nicole, if she votes out Holly, she's voting out the only person she's capable of beating in the final 2 right now. Now, that can always change. You can always try to make a better case, but at this point in the game, it's going to be really hard to do so. And so given all of that, it certainly makes sense for Nicole to why not throw the dice and keep Holly around. In fact, that does lead Nicole to a situation where she was a lot closer to winning the game than if she had voted out Holly, because if she had won the final 3 HOH, she wins the game. Yeah. And so for Nicole, this was kind of objectively the right decision. For Cliff, though, I think it was the wrong decision for many reasons. One, Cliff can beat either Jackson or Holly or Nicole. So there's a reason, there's logic to taking out Tommy and then, guaranteeing yourself a win in the final 2 if you get there. However, the path there is a little bit tenuous. And most importantly, they make a deal that is terrible for Cliff. The deal is that Holly will throw the HOH to Nicole at the final four, which basically just guarantees that Cliff will be evicted unless him or Nicole win the final four veto.
Right.
Just a terrible situation for him to agree to be in, and a terrible deal for him to agree to. Cliff also overestimated his relationship with Jackson.
Right.
He really thought that he'd be able to work it. But again, it was useless. Like, it's not like Jackson's going to evict Holly over you. And when Nicole is guaranteed final four HOH, what are you going to do?
Except that Jackson and Holly like fought a fair bit throughout this. So like
Certainly.
I do think that there's like some thing within Cliff that I can kind of understand why he might think that Jackson might decide to go good old boy route and take Cliff over. Like, it's wrong, and it like, it's probably not worth risking that possibility because they're in a showmance. But they did like fight a lot. It's right. There this is like conflict where like Jackson's talking about like, you know, this is the way his abusive ex-girlfriends would talk to him. And I'm like, I don't know, this relationship is lasting. But nevertheless, they like, he wasn't gonna vote Holly out. But I give something to Cliff. And then there's this lie that Jackson throws out to the basically overhearing this conversation with Tommy and then claiming that Tommy had was lying to Cliff and Nicole, and in fact already promised that he would take Jackson to the end.
Basically, because Jackson overheard the conversation, he was able to use pieces of it to add credibility to his lie. This makes for a very dramatic episode and eviction, as Tommy is in tears trying to convince them that he's telling the truth. This is probably one of the more overhyped, I think, plays of the season, in the sense that it's not really the lie that makes the decision happen. It's more so a catalyst for further discussion than it is the reason that Cliff and Nicole decide to go in that direction. The main two things that it accomplishes, again, just to make this clear, Jackson overhears the conversation between Tommy and Nicole and Cliff, and then is able to go to Nicole and Cliff and say, hey, Tommy told me about your conversation. He's lying to you. He wants to work with me. And then they go and question Tommy about it. Did you tell Jackson about our conversation? Tommy denies it.
Tommy was promising to throw the HOH comp to the next one, right? That's
which Nicole, which Holly is able to offer the same deal.
Right.
They end up, I think, ultimately believing Tommy over Jackson. But what it does is it throws a little, just enough doubt into Tommy to like reopen the negotiations in terms of like, let's have a conversation. It allows for the deal to be made, the more important deal to be made, which is Holly agreeing to throw the HOH, which quite frankly, again, is a deal that should have convinced Cliff to go in the opposite direction. It is Cliff that ultimately kind of like decides here. Nicole agrees to do what Cliff wants. Ironically, it's the thing that benefits Nicole more than Cliff. And so they end up evicting Tommy in very dramatic fashion. They go to an HOH where very quickly the HOH is thrown to Nicole. And that basically is it for Cliff, because now him or Nicole need to win the final four veto in order for him to survive. Now, if they had, he would have been in a fantastic spot to win this game. In fact, if they had won this veto, I think Cliff just straight up probably wins this game, because Jackson would have taken Cliff to the final two in a choice between him and Nicole, and Cliff would have beaten Jackson. However, this final four veto is not one that they are really capable of winning. That it is too physical for them to be able to keep up with Jackson, and he is going to crush them in this final four veto, and that is going to be it for Cliff.
Yeah, I think this is what I was saying before, where this is a terrible pre-jury. There is enough interesting pieces here in the middle, and it just kind of like the pieces fall in kind of the most boring way that ends up just letting, Jackson, Cliff gets voted out here, Jackson will go on to win. So it's a little I feel like if you get one different result at like near the end, I feel like it's not so much the middle, it's like around this part, and it's probably exactly this where like or probably at some point if Tommy and Christie kind of go out earlier, I feel like this season might be looked on a little better. It's just that it just feels like such a Jackson steamroll. But
well, and again, it's like if you want to understand the decision that Cliff made, you can again sort of see it in the sense that if he keeps Tommy, then he's not in such a strong position in the final 3 if he gets there necessarily, because he no longer has Jackson willing to take him to the final 2. Tommy's not taking him to the final 2, and so now all of a sudden he needs to kind of win his way there, him or Nicole. Whereas all he needs to do is win this final 4 veto, him or Nicole, take out Holly, and he's guaranteed a win at that point, pretty much. Now, how the jury votes is not something the players know for sure. But this is a season where a lot of them actually did have a pretty good idea that was pretty accurate in terms of how they actually would fare. So again, there is some, it's a decision that a lot of people will point to and say, like, this ruins the season. And they're probably right in the sense that, like, it led to a Jackson win. But for Cliff and Nicole, there were reasons to go in that direction. Again, I think the worst mistake for Cliff was just allowing the Holly throwing the HOH to Nicole, because they would have evicted Nicole over Cliff, and then he would have at least had a chance of winning the final 3 HOH and winning the game. But the fact is, they were never winning. Ever.
See, that being thrown a challenge is being a mistake is again a thing where you, like, the best player, like the elite, is like knows that that's a bad move, and because like there's a world where you're envisioning this where it's like you see yourself as the winner of the season. You're like, they threw me the chant, like it's like the, you know, it's the whatever situation. I was gonna say it's not really the Christmas situation, but you know, the idea that like that feels like it should be that like somebody threw me the challenge, and yet the best players realize it's actually not. It's in fact a move that might have lost you the game.
Yes, and as BB27 coming in the chat says, that is actually a move that benefited Jackson more than anyone, right. For multiple reasons. One was unintentional in the sense that it helped take Cliff out of the game instead of Nicole, and prevented him from making the mistake of going to the end with Cliff. And then on the other side, it insulated him from being evicted at the final 4 by leaving Holly as a viable alternative to evict if Cliff or Nicole had won the veto. And Cliff would have advocated for evicting Holly there over Jackson, because he would have known that Jackson would take him to the final 2 and he would beat Jackson. And Jackson, I believe, was aware of this as well at the time. He recognized that making this deal to save Holly was also leaving Holly in the game as a shield who is now not going to win the HOH, who is a buffer for him in the final 4. So quite frankly, I think a lot of people focus on the lie and they focus on the decision. But the key to all of this is the deal made to throw that HOH. That's the real spot where I'm saying Jackson made a really good play and Cliff made a really bad one.
And it's just, we've been joking about this thing. We've been doing the Last of Us coverage, and a line I keep saying is like, who you are depends, whether you're the hero or the villain depends on where you're sitting. And it's like Jackson then slowly by the end of the season, not that I think, well, yeah, there's a lot of people in the chat being like, Jackson's really condescending, which is true. But it's just like the old man with the, like, you know, chestnut checker, like all these like little phrases he has. He gets very annoying by the end of the season, and just watching him, you know, kind of walk to the end is not the most fun ending to a season. But yeah.
So we get to a final 3 where, again, if Nicole wins the HOH, the final 3 HOH, she takes Holly and she very likely wins the game. But she's shut out. She does not win part 1. She does not win part 2. And she is not even close to winning either one. They are both extremely physical, and she cannot keep up with Jackson or Holly. And so Jackson ends up winning the final 3 HOH and evicting Nicole in 3rd place. And just like that, Jackson and Holly are in the final 2 together. The jury expresses dismay when they see Cliff, because they really wanted to vote for him. And I think like resignation when they see Nicole, as Jackson and Holly are now going to be advocating for themselves in their final 2 speeches. So I was there, finale night. I watched from like the broadcast. We were in like an executive meeting room.
Ooh, that's cool.
There was the press. So we were not in the audience, actually. We were watching from a building in the same lot. And We watched Jackson beat Holly in the final two, the final three HOH. And then we watched the jury questioning as, it was pretty clear that Jackson was going to win, primarily because this jury, as I said from the very beginning of this podcast, there was a lot of movement in the direction of like dismay at the idea that the strategist or the active dominant player was not getting the votes needed to win the game over and over and over. And so even though the jury was annoyed at Jackson, they didn't like Jackson very much, many of them preferred Holly to Jackson. They felt like Jackson was the more active player, and therefore they needed to sort of like bite their tongue and vote for Jackson, swallow the medicine, and do the show a favor by doing the correct thing. And so Jackson ends up winning. However, we then get the pre-jurors on, and things really start to open up because he's being questioned about his misogyny, his racism, and he's starting to recognize, and this is even before the pre-jurors, they still like really grill him about some of the comments that he made, some of the things that he did, to the point where when the votes are being read, he's stone-faced. He is like not really in a good place. And certainly when the pre-jurors come on, they really start to ream him out. And this is truly like,
it's wild.
It's poetic.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, all season long, we talked about it. Jackson has had these like little phrases. It's like playing chess, not checkers.
I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Is that one?
Yeah.
Right.
I've got to be selfish for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And one of his phrases, because Jackson, he's a fan of the show.
Yeah.
He watched every season.
Yeah.
One of the things he liked to say was, I want to walk out to confetti. Just can't wait for that confetti. He talked about confetti all the time. Yeah. Just a shorthand for like winning the game and walking out to confetti. Every winner has that classic, iconic shot of them walking out the door, confetti cannons explode, and they're like celebrating. And Jackson had been envisioning that moment in his mind all season long. For years, even before playing, he was envisioning what it would be like to walk out to confetti. And like this was like twisted metal, and he got his wish from Calypso. Jackson walks out to confetti, and he's miserable because he was just exposed as a misogynist, racist. He'd been grilled about these things. He knows exactly how this is going to look to the viewers, and he walks out just cannot even enjoy the confetti at all.
It is. I mean, you said poetic, because I don't think there's a better word to describe it. It is so perfect. It always has been strange to me that they want the last moment of the show to be like, maybe they're worried about like we can't clean up all this confetti, so we gotta like so when they like get everyone to vote, but then they're like, and now let's just hang out for a bit. You're like, they're still in the house. It's so strange. Let them come outside. But they want that to be like the very last thing, and then they're all together, and then they'll announce the America's favorite. But yeah, I'm kind of just glad they did do it this time, or they didn't. Yeah, they did keep them in there, because it is. I mean, it is pretty uncomfortable, but who cares? But he's so miserable, Taran. He's like so upset. Yeah, this is a pretty wild.
Yes, he is not happy, and this is Jackson after winning the show. This is not the runner-up. This is the winner of the show in the moment of walking out as the winner, hugging people. Not happy.
Yeah, he did an interview with Julie recently. People were pointing out in the chat. Apparently, he blew all the money pretty quickly.
I think we knew this.
Yeah.
I guess how recently is the question?
I don't know. Yeah, and he broke up with Holly about a year, like less than a year later. So
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
if you want to know, Jackson, one of many people I think that has now talked about how he was in fact taking some substances at the time heading into the show. And I don't remember the details, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't remember exactly what he has said, but he's come out and said much of this stuff. So check out his interviews if you want to know more about exactly what was going on with Jackson at the time. But yeah, it's it's happened a few too many times, I would say. That's there have been people in the cast who have been struggling with some things.
Yeah, and then win all this money, just have a life-changing amount of money. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Jackson becomes the winner of Big Brother 21. Okay, here we go. I found an article on People. Big Brother's Jackson Mickey reveals he was secretly recovering from drug addiction on the show. He hid his addiction from the world. Well, in quotation marks, I would say hid. He was addicted to Xanax, struggled with Adderall and cocaine, took his last Xanax less than 2 days prior to moving in to the house. So you'd hope that casting would be a bit more careful.
Yeah. Nicole wins America's Favorite House Guest, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's
and then
right.
is then again invited to play again the following season.
I think it was maybe at the time like a smidge. I think I might have thought it would have been Cliff, but I think Nicole is certainly deserved.
Nicole was a much more popular figure at the time. Cliff took most of the heat for the decisions that he made that felt at best more practical and at worst cowardly and foolish. And so I would say that Cliff, I think, polarizing figure. Some people really love Cliff. Some people to this day are still pretty disappointed with some of the decisions he made in the house.
Yeah, fair enough. Nicole comes back. Yeah, it's great.
All right, Grace. Given all of this, who's on the poster for Big Brother 21?
I feel, in my opinion, I think you got to go Nicole. I feel like Nicole and Jackson are probably the biggest locks, and then I feel like there's a strong debate for who's the third.
I think Christie has a strong case. I think you could say Tommy. You could say Cliff.
Yeah.
You could go, justice for Ovi and Kemi.
I was thinking that too. I feel like, yeah. I feel like the audience is going to vote for Jessica, but I will.
You could go Jessica.
You could go Jessica. Yeah. I
There's
feel like
a lot of options.
I do agree. I feel like it's like I feel like there's a lot that are like buoyed up, and then there's like some you like no thank you, but there are quite a number of options that I would not be that mad at. Yeah. What if the audience just goes Kemi, Ovi, David?
That would be a very funny poster.
Yeah.
Trying to reverse.
Yeah. I feel like that's. I feel bad for Nicole maybe because I think Nicole deserves that.
Nah, Nicole doesn't need it. She's fine. She's doing fine.
All right.
So that's it. You can go to our robbinswebsite.com/BB Retrospective if you want to vote for who should be on the poster. You can head over there. I guess I can tell you the rest of I've told this story before, but my time at the Big Brother 21 finale, I went to the backyard. We interviewed the players. That video is up if you want to watch it. You'll see little baby me from 5 years ago interviewing the players. It was very cool to be in the backyard. I met Dr. Will, and I told him that I was a fan. And then after I finished my conversation with him, he turned to his I think his wife at the time, being like, "See, I'm cool."
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a good time. Like I said, I've told more detailed story before, but it was a very cool experience, even though it was not my obviously not the season I would have liked to be there. And then of course it was the last season that they've done backyard interviews because COVID hits for Big Brother 22, and they have not brought it back since. Even though now I'm on the West Coast, and it'd be very easy for me to do it.
Yeah, bring it back. Let's get a petition, change.org.
Yeah.
Do the backyard interviews. They were very fun to see them come out the next day. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is Big Brother 21. We will be back next week to talk about Big Brother 22, the COVID season, All Stars 2, the season where many of the people who we have talked about over the last like 10 plus weeks come back and disappoint us.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. All-Star seasons, maybe they're not good. Maybe except for all the ones that are coming up, but not this one.
Yeah. It's a season where I made a bet with with Melissa that surely the committee would not win every competition in the season, and then I lost that bet. I thought I had good odds.
Yeah, I think you would have, but
yeah. Listen, there's still plenty to talk about next week, and I'm sure we'll have a good time as we always do. As we're closing in again on Big Brother 27, so it's interesting,
very exciting.
All right, well, that's what we have for you then. Tune in next week for Big Brother 22. In the meantime, find me over on Twitch and YouTube. I'm making videos about the Genius UK. I also have made a Patreon where I'm releasing reactions to The Devil's Plan because I can't put it on YouTube because Netflix doesn't let me. And also, I recently discovered I also can't put the Genius videos on YouTube. At least they can't be monetized on YouTube. So the Patreon is sort of like the necessary place to provide support for these kinds of videos. If you like them, people have really liked them. It's basically me watching, and you can see the episode in real time as I'm commenting and pausing and talking, and analyzing the games, especially these kinds. So head over to the YouTube channel or find the Patreon if you want to see that kind of content. It would be very cool. And also check out the stuff we're doing at We Know Scripted. We're talking Tastemakers. We're talking about all the new scripted shows going on. And we were talking Last of Us. The finale is coming up. Very, very good episode recently. If you didn't watch The Last of Us. What else, Grace?
Yeah, I'm writing for Parade magazine about scripted television and some movie coverage there, so you can check that out. I'm writing a bit on Popeyes. I wrote about the season of Survivor on Popeyes. Popeyes is entirely ad-free. It's a subscription-based TV and movie pop culture site, so check that out. And I'm loving the taste. There was a comment on the YouTube of our Tastemakers episode, Taran, that said Taran and Grace are the best combo of podcasters on RHAP, which, who knows if that's true, but someone said it. And so if you want to listen to us on...
Sounds like that's a vote for Terrace.
Grarin?
To be on the poster. Grarin. To be on the poster for RHAP.
That's right. So I think we have a great time on Tasters. I think we do people a service. We watch a lot of TV and then we filter it out for you. So it's kind of like a live feed update, So we're like, so we watched this week, so in case you missed it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and I will see all of you next time.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.